McGregor was talking about it in the post-fight interview. He said that the Manny fight was all but done. I know that, with one of the things I did want to cover today, Floyd Mayweather came out and, absolutely destroyed that concept on Instagram. Did you see that, Mike?
No, I did. I saw that. And he said it's like my leftovers eating my leftovers. What he means by that, he's beating Conor and he's beating Pacquiao. And I get what he's saying. Listen, he's a former foe of McGregor. There was a lot of shit talks back and forth. So, he's going to come out. He's going to talk a little shit. Unfortunately for McGregor, when you're a guy like that, that's so outlandish, so, so very much adamant in his own confidence, in his own ability, the world is going to do that. The world's going to talk shit. Michael Rappaport, I didn't know he had a problem with Conor McGregor, but he was posting and making videos, taking the piss out of him and things like that. Unfortunately, when you put yourself out there and you talk so much shit, you gotta deal with it. You gotta deal with the public perception as well. And the public can be bloody cruel.
Yeah, but I mean, on the flip side of that, Mike, this is a guy who, he's made his bones making these outlandish statements, saying these insane things. Mayweather did kind of criticize him for that. He's like, he literally stole my whole blueprint, going out there and being all brash and cocky and everything. And everybody, they say people bought the Mayweather pay-per-view to see him lose. Clearly, McGregor's breaking these pay-per-view numbers. A lot of that has to be people buying the pay-per-view to see him lose. So if every now and then he gives the people what they want, it's probably good for the numbers overall. No.
Well, there is that, but also let's be honest. The reason people buy them is because he's so compelling. Because the man can fight and he attracts attention. He does. Listen, the man has a lot of charisma, and love him or hate him, the sport is better with him in it because he does bring a lot of excitement. He brings new eyeballs to it, and there's nothing like a Conor McGregor fight night. However, Floyd Mayweather wasn't the only one. Jake Paul, and I know I banned you from ever to bringing him up on the show again. And when I messaged you this one the other night, you went, whoa, too bad we can't talk about it. But Brian, please cue up that video because I don't want to talk about Jake Paul, but I got to say, I do respect high-level trolling and what he did on Saturday. I mean, he talked some pretty good shit to McGregor Saturday night. Let's take a look here.
Hey, Conor. I got $10,000 for you. Cash, baby. Cash money. Oh, you had $50 million. Hey, Conor.
Yeah, and he goes on. He said, "There's another video. He's like, you had 50 million. I had an offer. Funds approved. $50 million. Now I've got $10,000 or a third of a Bitcoin for you." And listen, Conor's not going to take the fight. Of course he's not, but still, it was pretty funny. Listen, for all his shenanigans and whatnot, and I don't know the guy, and I'm not a fan of the guy or nothing, but he's talking shit. He's trying to get the fight, and you got to give him an A+ for his attempts there.
Okay, well, I mean, look, here's the thing. Conor McGregor, obviously, his next fight has to be in MMA now, right? I don't think the Manny Pacquiao fight is going to, materialize or anything. Like you said, it seems like that Garcia fight, I was just looking it up, is all but a done deal according to Garcia and his people. So assuming McGregor does get a couple of wins in the UFC, though, why not just take a $50 million payday and go beat up some YouTuber? If this kid's going to keep running his mouth for a couple of years, why not just take the paycheck?
Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. But right now, I think he's got bigger fish to fry. I spoke about this last week. For Conor McGregor, people are like, he's got all the money, he's got the fame, he's got all that type of thing. But the one thing that he wants, that he desires, that is basically his identity. And it's the one thing, well, there's many things money can't buy, but it's one thing that money cannot buy. It's being the champion of the world. That's what he wants. That's his whole brand. You know what I'm saying? Right now, he's not. Right now, there's people above him, and that's got a sting. That's who Conor is. That's who he is in his own mind. And that's who he is to a lot of people outside throughout the world. They still think Conor just had a bad night at the office. He did have a bad night at the office, but they believe he can rebuild and come back and be champion again. And that's all Conor's concerned about. So I don't think he's going to be going out there and chasing YouTuber fights. I mean, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he calls it a day. I doubt that. I mean, the old saying, it's hard to get out of bed and do runs at 4 a.m. when you're sleeping in silk sheets. I think it was Evander Holyfield or maybe Marvin Hagler that said that. And it's true. It does affect you. It certainly does. You do lose your hunger. I mean, the man's pulling up on a massive yacht there. He's walking off and, I mean, don't get me wrong, cool as hell. But still, You know, you got to wonder what's going on in his circles. People have got to push him, and if he's not getting pushed, you know, and he's not going to push himself, then it's a bad recipe. You know, I forget who it was. They were saying this about the calf kicks. In fact, I think it was Laura Sanko. She had a really good point. You know, the calf kicks, they're a bitch. They hurt, but you got to get used to them. And you got to have people throwing them at you in training to deal with them, right? You can't get good at defending something if people don't throw them at you. Right. And they caught him off guard. So therefore, people weren't throwing them in practice. And I guarantee there is a certain element. Listen, when I was training for a fight, I was like, push me hard, push me hard. But don't fucking hurt me. This isn't the fight. I want to get paid for the fight. This sparring session today, I get nothing for. Right. The fight, I'm gonna make a lot of money for. So don't fucking hurt me. Get me to the fight. So there's people in the camp, I'm assuming. This is all assumption. I haven't heard anything. They don't want to hurt him. They're probably told, listen, go out there, push the guy, but don't fucking hurt him. So they're not slamming these low calf kicks into him with shin pads on in training, because then if he can't walk properly the next day, that's another day's training out the window.
Well, to that point, Khabib actually did chime in on Twitter talking about McGregor. He said, this is what happened when you change your team, leave the sparring partners who made you a champion, sparring with little kids far away from reality. I mean, is there some truth to that, you know, he's maybe changed up his regimen now that he is champion?
Not that I know of. You know, I know he went and trained out in Portugal for a bit there, but I know Owen Roddy was with him. I know that John Kavanagh was with him. I don't know who his sparring partners are or who these little kids that Khabib is referring to, you know, but I know it seems to be the same coaches around, and you always want to mix up training partners anyway, sparring partners for sure, because you get used to one another. What I have seen is that he does seem to be leaning on the boxing a lot. You know, there was less kicks in that fight, and there's been less kicks in some of his recent fights. And of course, mixed martial arts, you got to throw everything, you know. And listen, those kicks, they did a fucking great job. The wrestling did a great job. The pressure, the ability for Dustin Poirier to take his best shot, you know, that is going to, you know, if you're Conor, and I'm not talking about him specifically, but if you're the fighter in question, if you're the guy that everybody sees as having that gigantic power, and you can put people to sleep and you build a career on it and you hit people and they crumble, right? That's what you believe, and that's the general consensus, that's the popular belief. If you go out there and you crack someone with your best shot and they stand there and they take it and they're firing back, that's going to fuck with you a little bit. It is. And I do believe that affected Conor's confidence a little bit.
So one more question leading into that, right? Like, as a guy who, like you said, he pulled up on a yacht, got out. You saw him walking in there with his kid in one arm, his pregnant wife behind him, no shirt, walking through the hotel, joking with Dustin about, you know, the hot sauce brand and donating $500,000 to his charity before the fight, and all smiling and hugging, you know. There wasn't the same intensity that Conor McGregor in 2014 showed up, right? Trying to get into Dustin's head, talking smack about him consistently, like laughing at every turn, almost that maniacal Joker sense to him, the chaos. You never know what's going to happen next with this guy. Do you think part of that, like, you know, loss of edge is, you know, responsible for his performance on Saturday night?
You know, it's a good question. And I'm kind of in two minds about it, because, yeah, Conor is calmer now. You know, he certainly seems to be, you know, not being as crazy at the press conferences. His fight week energy is a little different. He's a little calmed down. And generally, I say that's good, because I talk about it ad nauseum, you know, how the mind controls everything. If you're angry and you're mad, and I've talked about it a million times, I'm not going to go through it. But you don't want to go into that kind of environment angry, mad, and worked up. So that's beneficial to him. However, there is a flip side of this, and I saw this in my career. When I first started fighting people, right, afterwards, I couldn't remember my fights because I was in such a fucking blaze of anger and aggression. I'd just go out there and I'd swing and I'd fucking beat the shit out of people. I would. My early fights, I would beat the shit out of people. Then as my fight career progressed, I started getting a lot more technical. Maybe a little too technical, and maybe overthinking it a little bit. I'm trying to be overly strategic, you know, and that wild side certainly diminished. The technical side went up, but the wild side went down. You know what I mean? And what you got to do is find that happy medium, you know. And I think for me, I did eradicate it a little bit too much. And to answer your question, I don't think Conor overdid being calm. He still came out and had a great first round. So I don't feel that did affect him negatively, having that kind of mindset, being at peace with himself, being at peace with those around him, being calmer. It's always having that nice, clear, calm mind will always be beneficial. And we saw him when he came out in the first round to start. He looked good. He looked sharp. He looked faster, was popping the punches. But when he started facing adversity, things changed. And a lot of people are like that. And this might be an unpopular thing to say, but I'll say it. Some fighters are great when they're the hammer. And some fighters aren't too bad when they're the nail. And sometimes you've got to be the hammer and you've got to be the nail. You know what I'm saying? And you've got to be the ability. If you're going to be a good fighter, right, and win these kind of fights, these worn out dragged out wars, you've got to have the ability to be the fucking nail on occasion. You know what I mean? You've got to have the ability to go out there for a round and get your ass kicked and be leaking blood from every goddamn orifice, but still have the mental toughness to get back to your feet and shake it off and say, okay, that round's in the rearview mirror. Let's go again, you know? And so that's what I need to see from McGregor going forward. He's awesome when he's the bully. He's awesome when he's in control of the fight. But when people can take the damage and then turn it around and put him under pressure, you know, that's when we see him kind of fold a little bit.
So certainly, you know, I feel like nothing represents that more than the difference between the first and the second Diaz fight. If you remember, that first Diaz fight came out, completely unloaded the tank, was gassed out by that second round, tried to go for the takedown, got himself choked out. In that second fight, he was expecting that adversity, was expecting Diaz to be there later into the rounds, got his ass absolutely beaten down in the third round and was doing everything he could to just survive before coming out in the fourth round and dominating that and eventually winning the fight in a decision. Do you think in a third fight with Poirier, you'll see more of that from McGregor?
Yeah, well, that's a good example. And I was talking about that with Callum on Saturday night. I was saying the same thing to Callum, and I was saying, listen, of course, Conor's shown that in the past. You know, I'm not sitting here hating on Conor, and I'm not sitting here kissing his ass. I'm talking about what I saw through my lens, and what I saw Saturday night. You know, the tide turned. He took some damage. He saw that Dustin could take his best shot. He got a little bit tired, you know, and put all things together. And then his leg was banged up. Dustin was kicking the shit out of him, and then he unloaded with a great combination, you know, and he got beat. In the second Diaz fight, yeah, he showed the ability to weather the storm, you know, because that was a back and forth affair. That was a hard fought victory. It was a 5-round war. You know, some people thought Diaz won. I don't. I thought McGregor won that fight quite clearly, in my opinion. But he did show the ability to be in a fight and take that. So I'm not saying that Conor doesn't have that. I'm just saying Saturday night, we didn't see that.